Greetings, everyone. DFG here, Gideon's Flight. Hey, guys. We're still awaiting the sentencing for Botham Jean. Uh, but I just wanted to just do a follow-up video on yesterday's video, and just for some clarification. Because I was asked a question earlier today, a very fair question, an intelligent question, and it was, well, why didn't you feel it was right for blacks to be celebrating that Amber Guyger was found guilty? Well, and just to be clear, I'm not saying that I'm not happy that our ass was found guilty. We all should be happy that any murderer of an innocent person is found guilty. The bigger point that I was trying to make was that we should not look at that as some honorable thing, like somehow or another we are privileged because they found one murderous police officer guilty of committing crimes, when we know that these kind of atrocities are happening to our people all the time. And it just makes us look, in my opinion, trivial. You know what I'm saying? When we get all excited whenever justice is done to us, as though we don't expect, or we should not expect, equal justice every single day of every single year through our entire lifespan. So my point that I was making, or at least attempting to make, was the fact that, no, I'm not going to go throw a party because Amber Guyger was found guilty of something that she was obviously guilty of, and I don't think any of us should. We should have such a high standard and expectation. If you take one of our lives, we're going to be galvanized to the point where we will take and burn down your damn city if you don't justly hold those accountable who commit those kind of atrocities against us. No different than if you killed I don't know, let's just say an Italian, or someone from, let's just say, Korea, or any other country around the world. If they are murdered in America by anyone, including the police department or the government, then you're talking about an international event. You're not just talking about them killing the person and everybody just going on about their business. No, the entire community of that particular ethnic group are going to be outraged, and they're going to demand justice. And they're not going to celebrate because they got justice. They're going to expect it, and not only will they expect it, they're going to be somewhat outraged that it happened in the first place. So that's what I'm saying. And when you look at someone like Botham Jean, yes, he's a black man. But let me tell you something else about Botham Jean. Botham Jean has 175,000 people standing behind him of his culture. I'm talking about people from St. Lucia. 107, almost 180,000. Botham Jean has a GDP country that does 50% of his GDP import, I might add, from the United States of America. Do you really think, that, this government is going to forfeit, billions of dollars behind some poor white trash cop who kills, someone who they're doing international trade and international business with? That ain't gonna happen. Not only that, but St. Lucia, in case you didn't know, is one of those countries where America does a lot of overseas banking with. So a lot of your corporate executives and a lot of your top elitist people, your wealthiest people around this country, have a lot of offshore accounts in St. Lucia. You think they're going to have their money messed up behind Amber Guyger? So when you're looking at Botham Jean, did you notice that whole solidarity thing they did with the red? That was to identify them as a class. That was their way of saying, this is how we identify. Now, we don't have that, as so-called African Americans here in this country. That's why they can so easily shoot one of our young men or women down without any type of fear of repercussions. What repercussions? We don't have 175,000 united people that's going to stand. We don't have a government that's going to stand up for us. We don't have economic power that we could use to punish those who offend us. We should. We could. But at the end of the day, we don't. So when you hear what I'm talking about, at least when you consider what I'm saying, you have to understand Botham Jean is not your average. Botham Jean is not a so-called African American. He's not ADS. He's not a American descendant of slavery. Botham Jean is from St. Lucia, a sovereign country, guys, a growing country, a country that has a growing GDP, a population growth, a highly educated country, a country that's 95% black Africans. He's not an American. You know, he may be a citizen because he may have citizenship here, but he's not you, he's not me. And so when you start to look at the justice that he gets a total different kind of justice. A justice that's not for us. We don't get his justice. And therefore, that's why Amber is held accountable. Because when you attack someone from these other countries, you're not attacking the individual, you're attacking a nation. When Botham Jean was murdered, St. Lucia, the prime minister, made a phone call to the United States and wanted to know what was going to happen, what accountability was going to look like. If your son or daughter gets killed, you're lucky if some activist shows up and picket in front of the damn police station, let alone, you know, accountability in terms of holding those accountable who may have murdered your son or your daughter. So I just want to clarify so that you understand Botham Jean is not you. Botham Jean is 175,000 strong with a GDP of over $4 billion and an importing country of United States imports. In other words, 50% of the imports are coming in from the United States. So you have a lot of corporations, a lot of rich people making money off of St. Lucia. Not making that money off of your child or your daughter that's in Cabrini Green or what's his name? What's the other one up in Los Angeles? I can't even think of the name of the projects, or the projects all around this country, or the hood, or the so-called ghettos, the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans. He's not the same guy. And guys, we shouldn't confuse that. We're around here celebrating, this whole thing where, finally a black man got justice, and this justice is going to change the policies of the whole world. That policy around the world has always been in place. If you harm someone from another country, whoever harmed that person inside of this country is going to get held accountable. It's an international event. That's not a new thing, that's an old thing. It's just new to us because many of us are just ignorant to that. When somebody says black, we all look up like it is inclusive of all of us. When the last time, do you really think that if a black person, an African American, was in St. Lucia and was killed by a police officer in St. Lucia, do you think all the St. Lucia people would come and rally at the courthouse against their own government? I doubt it. I don't think they will be over there fighting for you. We see these blacks who have been killed in the Dominican, African Americans who were killed in the Dominican Republic, remember? Early this year. I don't remember the people from Dominican Republic, protesting in the streets and being outright, pissed off that, an American citizen were killed in their country at one of their hotels or what have you. I don't recall all that, do you? Do you recall it? Therefore, when you hear it and you understand, or at least I hope you're attempting to understand where I'm coming from, is that he's not us. Yes, he's black, but he's not us. And we need to understand that clearly, because I can assure you, he knew he wasn't us. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't a good guy. Sounds like he was a wonderful, terrific person. But he had a government backing him up. Who's backing you up? Who backed up those women who were getting slapped around by those Middle Easterners a week before last? Who backed them up? A couple of protesters in Pittsburgh, and that was the end of it. Until we come together as a people and unite as a people, you're not Botham Jean, and Botham Jean is not you. And that's all I'm trying to say. We can use him as an example of what a community could do with a community if we galvanized and we took our resources and put it to work for us as a community. We can use him as an example. We can use St. Lucia as an example in that regard. But we're so far away from there, guys, that two of us can't bump into each other without pulling guns. And I'm right. So that's an explanation, and that is my best, rationale that I can share with you around my position on the whole thing with why we shouldn't be celebrating, an anomaly, an event where one black man from another country got justice. His justice is not our justice. We have a long ways to go to get that kind of justice. And it starts with unity, it starts with economic power, and it starts with consciousness and recognizing, who you are and who you're not. Okay? Love you guys. As always, thank you for listening. as I said, follow up behind me. Check behind me if you're questioning any of the facts, the data that I've just given you. I even think Botham Jean's mother is a high official in that country. You think the United States is going to play with that money? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Not when that money is unified. So yes, did the system work for Botham Jean and St. Lucia? Yes. Is it working for you and I? No. And you know it. And now you do know it. If you didn't know it, now you know it. Okay? And again, I love you enough to tell you the truth. And that's all I can say. Thank you for listening. Hope you share this video. DFG. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye now.